Get in, chop.
Yo, what's up, you guys? It's your girl, Trudy LPC, and thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Self-Aware and Adult Podcast. When I tell you guys, today's episode is going to be absolutely amazing. I am speaking with the storyteller, Rachel Burrell, and she is going to be telling you a lot about the books that she's written, the songs that she's written, and just exploring life and purpose and all of those good things that we all have to go through in life. So she is an author as well as a songwriter. She also gives back to kids, and she may or may not share that part of her journey, but I think it's a really important part of her journey. So without further ado, please welcome to the Self-Aware and Effed Up Podcast, Miss Rachel Burrell. Hey Rachel, how you doing today?
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. I am glad we were able to connect, and I really, really look forward to learning a little bit more about you. Your story is very inspiring in terms of just kind of what you do, the books that you've written. I know you've written 4 books, and I really want to hear a little bit more about those. There are 2 that really just caught my eye that I want to dig into a little bit as you share those things. But I guess we could just go ahead and get started by having you tell yourself a little bit, tell the audience a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So once again, thank you so much for having me. I'm an author. I would say an overall creative because I just love to create. I love performing. I love writing. I just love the whole process. And I love teaching. So my mom's a teacher. So I always wanted to be a teacher. But I realized that I didn't want to be a teacher in the traditional sense. So that's why I go into high schools and I'm able to teach workshops. But at the end of the day, like I get to decide the lesson. It's not so much on a such a rigid schedule. But I was born in Wisconsin, raised in Jamaica. My parents are Jamaican, and moved to New York at 12 years old, and I currently reside in New Jersey.
Okay, nice. So you've been around a little bit. Wisconsin is quite the place.
Wisconsin is quite the place. I know nothing of. I left at 2 years old, so it's kind of funny.
I gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Well, that is awesome. I love, the fact that you have, been able to live in the States, out of the States in Jamaica, and then also going back to like the New York, New Jersey area. That's pretty dope, actually. So I really, really was intrigued by your story when you reached out and we were kind of connecting over Facebook because I started going a little bit into, looking at your books and looking at the things that you had done. And I was really, really intrigued by the short story that you wrote, The Memories That Linger. And I wanted to just kind of explore that a little bit because we all kind of deal with some of those things. And so can you talk a little bit more about what inspired the writing of that book and just share a little bit about that?
Sure. So as you just said, we all have things that just tug away at us. We might have those 1 or 2 things from the past that just keep creeping up no matter how we try to dismiss it. And so I pulled from a lot of my experiences writing that. I mean, yes, it's listed under fiction, but there are a lot of non-fictional aspects to it. The protagonist, her name is Aisha, and she's decided that she's ready to take charge of her life. She's in her 20s now. She's, growing and learning herself, but there's still these things from her past that keep haunting her. And a lot of it is centered around family. A lot of the trauma and the pain that we have that we take into adulthood starts, happen to us in our family. And some of the closest people to us are the ones who have hurt us. And so the story pretty much is about her finally once and for all saying, like, I'm going to take charge. I'm going to focus on my healing. I'm going to tackle these things head on instead of running away from them. Because if you don't confront the problem, they're going to keep haunting you. So pretty much these memories keep haunting her, keep controlling her in a sense. So that's more or less it's more or less about her journey towards healing.
So is her journey really your journey?
Yeah, I would say in a lot of ways it is, certainly I do think that art imitates life and vice versa. So in a lot of my writing, you'll always see parts of myself in that writing. So yeah, certainly I've had my experiences and memories that I needed to confront. And so I would say in a lot of ways, I pull from my experience to be able to write of Aisha, yes.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I like the pulling from it. I know like sometimes, people do a biographical kind of thing, and then sometimes you don't want to put everything out there. And so finding a way to kind of write through the lens of another character can be very cathartic as well. Was that writing that story, was that something that helped you through your healing journey?
Yeah, I would say so. I had a lot of time to myself because I actually released that like right at the height of the pandemic, probably a few months in. I just had more time to be at home. And I was the short story opens by saying it's 12:24 a.m. And that literally is the time that I started writing. I just kind of rolled over, picked up my phone and started typing in my phone. And, yeah, there's certain things from childhood, from even adulthood, that certain dynamics, because I would say that I'm very different from both of my parents. On the one hand, my dad is a little more liberal, my mom's a bit more conservative. I'm somewhere in between. But yeah, it's a very interesting mix. I'm somewhere in between, but I would say certainly because I can't speak to all Caribbean households, but I know in a lot of Caribbean households, you probably don't really talk about feelings too much or discuss certain things. There's a
Okay.
parent-child dynamic, even when you're grown up.
Mm.
So yeah, I thought for me, writing really has been a great release from the very beginning. Like even when I started writing just poetry and songs, that was like my therapy. So I
Mm.
certainly, even writing now books, it's still some form of therapy and release for me
Gotcha.
that I hope to then translate to the reader.
Right, right. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously you said it was something that you've done for a long time. What caused you to be interested in wanting to kind of share your stories and share the journeys that you create with the world through your song and through your books?
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like art makes you your most vulnerable.
Mm.
Because I always talk about this, that some of the things that I share in my books and my writing, I probably wouldn't necessarily share in a regular face-to-face conversation.
Yeah.
But somehow, the vulnerability that comes through writing feels it's different. You want to be a bit more open. But yeah, I initially started, and it wasn't something that I even envisioned myself pursuing on a professional level. It was
Mm.
just, as I was saying, that release and that escape, because it was like, well, I can't really talk to you about this thing that's on my mind. It's not really
Mm.
going to be addressed in the way that I'm hoping that it will be addressed. So I'm just going to write.
Yeah.
And then as I started writing, that led me to getting involved in musical theater in high school. And from there, I was like, oh, I
Okay.
can combine the two. I can combine writing and performing. And that's even more of a release. Like I never feel as at peace as when I'm doing either of those things.
Okay. I love that.
Yeah.
I love the
Yeah.
combination of two. One, because I love musical theater as well. So that's the whole thing. I love a good musical, a good Broadway show, all of that.
I
So
love it.
so you said something, and this wasn't even in my mind to go to, but I think it is curious. I think it is important to kind of highlight that a little bit. Why do you think it is in Caribbean households that the ability to talk about your feelings or be vulnerable is not, I guess, accepted or practiced?
I would love to know because I really wanted to change. Um, and I think that's a part of why I'm so different from my parents, right? Because I think everything that I've looked for, I want to give, like,
Mm.
okay, I want people to be able to come talk to me, if you open it, be themselves around me, no matter what.
Mm.
So I think there's this traditional aspect, this very like rigid almost way of thinking that I'm the adult. Like I said, even when you've stepped into adulthood and you're completely independent and paying your own bills, there's still this like at the end of the day, there's still this level above you that I always am just based on the parent-child dynamic. And
Mm.
I think it can be really damaging. So it's something that I have become passionate about talking about, because if someone feels like they can't express their feelings,
Mm.
that's people. some people might release it in very destructive and damaging ways. I was
Yeah.
fortunate enough to turn it into a creative outlet, but everyone doesn't go down that route, because at the end of the day, everyone wants to feel heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that having that voice, like I see that working with clients, and I will be honest, I've not had many clients from Caribbean countries, Jamaica specifically. I've not had many from there, but when I have had clients from there, it's kind of the same story of not being able to talk, not being able to share. And I think it's great that you kind of highlight that a little bit and wanting to kind of change that dynamic, because there are a lot of people who suffer in silence. And I think that that does a lot of damage to just people in general. So I think that it is good that you talked a little bit about that. Do you write about that at all, or is it kind of just activism?
No, I haven't written about it so far, but who knows where, what might happen. But yeah, it is something that I'm passionate about, because there's this sort of stubbornness, when a lot of people are set in their ways, and I think it can be harmful if you think, well, this is the way it's always been done.
Yeah, I get that.
That
Yeah.
doesn't mean it was right.
Right. Yeah. And so with that, I mean, I know that you kind of talked a little bit about things you're passionate about. And I know that one of your books also explores purpose. And I feel like, that journey to purpose idea, I know, we'll talk a little bit more about that piece of it. But when I was reading about it, what came to mind for me was the idea of the purpose driven life. And I'd like to know a little bit about the book, but I also want to know a little bit about your journey to purpose.
Awesome. That's a great question. And actually, this is a book that most people have responded to the most, that people have responded to the most, because I think a lot of people, especially if you've had more time to reflect since everything that happened, I know things are more or less back to normal, at least on the surface, right? But I think that a lot of people had time to think and reflect. And like I said, I know I did. And I'm someone who likes to reflect in general, probably to the point where I might overthink sometimes, or just but I think it sort of ties into the first story. It was a play on that, except this, I make no bones that this is completely nonfiction, every aspect of it. But yeah, it's the same thing. I spent a lot of time looking to find my voice. And it ties into what we talked about earlier, where when you feel like you're not being heard, when you feel like you have something to say and no one's hearing it, you now start to look for, okay, how can I find my voice? I feel like I have something to say. And again, art, writing, performing has been that outlet where I get to say what it is I feel that I want to say. And, all of those things, working on my own healing, on my own growth, looking for the bigger that I can contribute in my way, because I spent a lot of time just really questioning. I'm so intrigued by philosophy and life and why we're here.
Okay.
And I really spent a lot of time asking that question based on some of the things that I was going through that seemed a little harsh, even that seemed, sometimes there might be, you're like, well, what the hell is the point if this is how it's going to go down? Like, because more than ever, I'm like craving peace and joy and just feeling completely fulfilled, and like I'm walking in a higher calling. And so all of these things were things that I had time to explore, and sort of what led me here. When that's why I resonated with that podcast episode that you had, where it was beating odds and turning pain to purpose, because that was my same sentiment. Like, you can either let the things that you've been through destroy you, or you can say, I'm going to take charge, and I'm going to figure out how to use this to not only empower myself, but then help to empower other people. Because ultimately, that's what it's about. It's about taking those experiences and then reaching out to help someone else. lot of people feel alone. A lot of people feel unheard. A lot of people feel like no one understands. And so in sharing your story, you can help them to say, I do have a purpose. Thus, I say a lot, as long as you have a pulse, you have a purpose. A lot of people feel like, well, what's the whole point of life? I'd rather be like, why am I here? But the fact of the matter is you're here for a reason. And if you do have a purpose, and it's a matter of finding it.
Yeah. So you already know where I'm going now. How do they find that? What would you say to someone who's struggling to find that?
I really think it's stepping back away from everything and like confronting your feelings, even when it's really, really painful to do that. And the thing that hurts you the most, you can now say, how can I take this pain and turn it into triumph? Because for me, it was, I'm going to write. For someone else, it might be, I'm going to teach, I'm going to paint, I'm going to serve in the community. So it's figuring out how to take that pain, that struggle, and turning it into something that is now empowering. And I really do think a big part of how we do that is to not just make it about us, but about other people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that you kind of like knocked that all the way out of the park. You set it up for me to even ask you that question, and then you just knocked it out the park, because it is so much about community and giving back. And when people talk about purpose, I find that a lot of people lack purpose because they are focused on themselves and not focused on, what am I leaving in this world? How am I leaving the world better than it was when I came in? And so I'm so glad that you said that, and that you said it so beautifully, because it is so important, and a lot of people struggle with finding their purpose. And a lot of people want to end their lives because they don't know what their purpose is. So I love that you highlight that. But I know that, for a lot of people, they don't have a voice, and it really feels like this journey to purpose and really being able to dig into the personal, side of things, and you sharing your experience can really help a lot of people through their own problems. I know that you kind of use writing as a tool for you to kind of navigate that, but you've not only written about your personal journeys, you've also written some other books that I want you to share a little bit about, because they may be able to help other people through other circumstances. So can you speak a little bit more about those?
Sure. So the third one is called Lines and In Between. And if you're a fan of poetry, then you'll appreciate that book, because that really is not so much like a story in terms of beginning, middle, end, but really a collection of poems and quotes. But again, all of my poems are tackling some aspect of what I see around me. So it's more or less the same thing. If you're looking to hear poetry about life, about confronting a family parent dynamic, I've become really big on that. Social issues, that's something that I'm writing about a lot too, and something that I write about a lot in my songs too, because I have a project coming out this month. Okay. And we tackle a lot of social issues in that. So that's something that's really big too. So if you're more looking for just a mixed bag of various subjects, that's more or less what In Betweens is about. Lines and In Between is about. And like I said, the fourth one, you, a sales expert, of course, is completely different. And that really is if you're interested in sales, or you have a business and you're looking to, because my background's in sales, when I wasn't in a creative space and doing my job bills, it was sales.
I got you. You had to make that money, honey. I get
you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. So I definitely get that. But you definitely are a wealth of knowledge in the way you share. And you said you have an album that's coming out in September.
Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah. What's the name of your album?
The last song on Thursday. So I'm really excited.
Okay. So what's the name of your album, so we can look for it when it comes out?
Knowledge, Wisdom. knowledge, wisdom. And it's me and a longtime friend who's also a really dope artist. So and Rachel, and Rachel. And you know, this is where I think we talk about community, teaming up with other people who can push you and can help you to grow, and you can learn something from, is really, really important. Because,
Yeah.
you know, I have stuff that I work on by myself, and then I have stuff where I collaborate. This is my second or third time collaborating with him. And this man is like a walking, you know, he's so on the pulse with what's happened in our community, and just from the beginning of time, it seems that I just learned so much from him. And so whenever we collaborate, it just forces me to grow. So that's the other thing. You want to get around people who can almost force you to grow, because you know you've got to step your game up and your knowledge up when you're around them. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
So that project I'm really excited. Like, we're talking about the dynamics of you know, the dynamics between Black women and Black men, how in a lot of ways there seems to be a lot of conflict, but we really need to come together. You know, there's just so many different topics that we're touching on with that. So I'm really excited.
Right. It sounds like it's going to be a really, really dope album. What style album is it? Like, for those that are really, really into music, what kind of style would you put it in?
Yeah, this one is a fusion of R&B, soul, and hip hop, because he's a hip hop spoken word artist, and then I sing. So it'll be a fusion of both. Yeah.
All right. Do you do spoken word?
You know, I really don't consider myself a spoken word artist. I mean, because I have the poems, it's funny because poetry performing is the one thing that I'm slightly conscious about, because it's the one thing that I have the least experience in terms of live performing. So I'm like, you know, but if it comes to like singing, I'm 100% just completely comfortable. It's like how some people say they have like you know how Beyonce has like Sasha Fierce. They'll have this person that takes. That's how it's not even Rachel anymore.
Gotcha. What's your alter ego's name? Let us find out.
That's probably the storyteller.
Gotcha.
That's probably the storyteller, although she's not wildly wild, but she's a little more bold.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I really do love what you do and love how you do it in the world. And I think that what you do is very necessary, you know. And I know you said you really, you know, the kids things is something that you do on your own time, but I do feel like, you know, it is important to highlight that, because it goes back to community and giving back, which we all, you know, at some point there's some that pulling and tugging on us to be able to do. So I really, you know, I love what you do, and thank you so much for sharing your gift with the world and with me. Appreciate that.
Thank you so very much.
Yeah. So before I let you go, I have to ask you this one question. And I want to know, you know, the audience always knows that I ask everyone this question. How do you personally, not professionally, not the storyteller, just Rachel, how do you personally identify with the idea of being self-aware and fucked up?
That is such an interesting question. You know, I think that honestly, I would say that I allow myself not to feel any pressure to be perfect. I really think that's where I'm at. Like, just, this is who I am. I'm not perfect. I've been through some things, but I'm going to be honest about it. And I'm not going to really try to compromise myself for the sake of acceptance. So I think that's the short answer. That's what it is. Like, I don't want anyone to think that I'm perfect, because I'm not. I don't want to ever come across as anything but myself, because at the end of the day, like, we all are fucked up in some way, and we all have issues that we're dealing with. And I think that a lot of people are, for me, like, the biggest thing now is to just be vulnerable, because I did spend a lot of time not being vulnerable for the reasons that I mentioned. But now I realize that I need to be vulnerable. Actually, it's actually a necessity, because there are a lot of people, especially now with social media, you know, there are pros and cons. I but a lot of people feel this pressure to actually hide that side of themselves that's not perfect. And it's just a lot of smokes and mirrors. So for me, I'm gonna lay it all on the table, even if it's a little uncomfortable. So that's the answer. It's just being aware that I'm not perfect, and still being open to continually growing and becoming. And actually, I know you mentioned not me, the artist, the storyteller, but in a lot of ways, they're one and the same, just because I'm really pulling, as I mentioned earlier, from my life and everything that's made me who I am to this point in my life, and that I'm continuing to become. So
Gotcha. I didn't quite hear the fucked up part in there, but I'm gonna let you pass.
I did. I think I did. I did say something. No, all I said is, actually, probably all I said is that we're all fucked up in some way.
Which ain't got nothing to do with you. You said you. I said personally you, but I'm gonna let you pass because I like your answer in general. So you get an A+. I'm just playing.
Get an A for effort or not?
Yeah, E for effort, that part. So how can people connect with you, Rachel?
Or the storyteller Instagram. You can send me a message at my email, info@pulseforpurpose.com, or or the storyteller, more or less, Instagram, because that's where I'll probably check the most.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Website?
Pulseforpurpose.com. PULSEFORPURPOSE.com.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for your time. It's definitely been
my
absolute pleasure to speak with you. So I really, really appreciate your time. You guys, please make sure that you connect with Rachel, purchase her upcoming album. Also check out her books and her website, Pulse for Purpose. And also be sure to follow me, Tree the LPC, on all social media platforms under the handle Tree the LPC. Until next time, be safe, be well, and make sure that you take care of your mental health.